To love without fear is truly freeing. Because if you can love without attachment, then that is the purest form of love. If you can love something without trying to dominate it and making it yours. And that's kind of what he is doing throughout the whole movie, is he loves that woman, he loves his female protagonist, and he loves his country enough to do all of the things that he knows needs to be done to set Britain back on the path of righteousness. As I'll point out later on in part 2, I know it's not confusing at all that I'm doing part 3 first, but basically the scene in the very beginning where he's standing in the tight alleyway with that is arched, it looks almost like a brick arched doorway. It denotes the idea of a Savior Christ kind of figure, and actually if you look at the negative space behind his head and hat, you will see that a cross actually forms. And the way that his hat and face is haloed also gives that feeling that the Savior has arrived. So basically, when we're sticking with the concept and theme of love, in Christianity, the Christ, his main message was love everyone. And so maybe it was a weird take on love thy neighbor enough to kill everyone, but the government was evil and they deserved to take down. For instance, we just saw 20,000 veterans storm our Capitol building on what they perceived as a violation of their rights in the country that they loved. So, in their minds, they had to take down the system. Thank God they failed.
Okay, enough theatrics. This is the scene that I chose. It is one of the first scenes in the movie. He is attempting, or not attempting, but he is about to come face to face with the Fingermen. The first thing that jumps out glaringly at me is the fact that his body projects several V's in a negative space behind him, as you can see here. It's also, the picture is also in 1-point perspective, so all of the lines converge in the middle of him, making him the very center of the picture, which also forms triangles, which are V's. Obviously, because it's 1-point perspective, the scene has 1 point of perspective, and it happens to converge in the middle of V, who is played by Hugo Weaving, who also starred in The Lord of the Rings as Lord Elrond and Agent Smith in The Matrix. I can tell you that through manipulating this picture in my editor, that the contrast is actually way turned up. Because if you turn the contrast all the way down, there appears to be an exit that we didn't see before, and I'll point that out in a little bit. This shot has to be a full shot because we're seeing a full shot of him from foot to head, but it's not far enough away that it would be a long or extreme long shot. The angle seems to be below eye level, but not so far as to make him look godlike or superior to anybody, or to downplay his strength and importance. If I had to make an educated guess, I would say that they ran this through some kind of color manipulating filter, because the only color we see other than the red is the white, with the red obviously symbolizing the blood that will or has been shed. The black could be mourning of the dead, as if you were to mourn someone that had died, not mourning like time of day. For me, the secondary contrast is obviously his lit head that forms the shape of a cross if you compare it to the negative space behind it. And obviously, as I spoke to before, this has to do with the fact that they're trying to portray him as the savior that's come to save Britain. Something interesting that I came across when manipulating the photograph or the scene is that if you darken it, the cross actually becomes a devil with horns. And I just can't think that they did this by accident. As I mentioned in the other video that I made for this movie, there is an extreme duality about this character, both evil and good. The density involved with this scene is just amazing, because there are so many elements packed into this. Being it a closed scene where it looks like he can't escape, to all of the hidden cues, like the saint appearance of his, or the Christ appearance of his hat. There is just so much going on in this scene that doesn't really appear to have that much in it. Speaking of x-rays, when you manipulate the shadows and contrast of this scene, the closed shot also reveals maybe where he came from or an escape route that he's planned for himself. This was definitely a closed form. The world exists outside the image, yes, but the director uses this image to pretty much define the rest of the movie, as he is a Christ-type savior coming to save Britain, and it all happens really early in the movie, right in this scene.